Weekly Driver Podcast gets support from ExtremeTerrain.com, your Jeep Wrangler authority for all things YJ, TJ, JK, and JL related. Extreme Terrain is dedicated to providing accurate information and top-notch customer service for the hottest Jeep parts around. Visit ExtremeTerrain.com today and enter weekly for your chance to win two 2018 JL Wranglers from now through November 15th, 2017. Good afternoon. This is the Weekly Driver Podcast. My name is James Raia, co-host with Bruce Aldrich, who is on assignment this week. Our guest this week is John Kraman. John is a former automotive and aircraft mechanic, a pilot, and a car collector, and he spent many years with Mecum Auctions, the largest auction company in the United States. In a couple of weeks, the Mecum Auction is going to have a new show in Las Vegas, and we're going to talk to John about that. I had a chance just recently to go to my first Mecum Auction, which is where I met John. And John, good afternoon. How are you today?
Hey, doing good, James. Glad to connect with you. Looking forward to talking auctions and cars with you.
Terrific. Let's jump into the upcoming auction, and I've got a bunch of things to ask about. But I know that Mecum has so many auctions these days. How did Las Vegas come about, and what was the market, and how are you going to show all these fantastic cars in a place like Las Vegas?
Yeah, well, it's a really great story. We've got a lot of experience in Las Vegas with the world's largest collector motorcycle auctions for the past several years. But we've never held a car auction there, and the local market has been telling us, when are you going to do cars out here? We want Mecum in Las Vegas. And the problem is, with our big schedule, 14 collector car auctions this year, 2 vintage motorcycle auctions, 3 tractor auctions, several road art, which is memorabilia auctions, the list continues. It's very difficult to try to find dates that work for us and that has a venue suitable for the size of what we do, how many cars we bring in. Bottom line, it all worked out. Everything lined up perfectly. We are at the prestigious and gorgeous Las Vegas Convention Center. We will have almost 1,000 great cars. We put a target out of 900. We're going to be over that, closer to 1,000 cars for our debut. It's incredible. It will be the largest collector car auction that Las Vegas has ever seen, and I think that says there's pent-up demand for Mecum in Las Vegas.
Now, John, I've only been to one of the auctions, but one thing I really liked about it, and we all know that there are lots and lots of car auctions around the United States and around the world. Mecum is different in that it's kind of the everyman's auction, the rock and roll show of car auctions, if you will. And can you tell me your history and how that philosophy came about, that these kinds of auctions that Mecum has around the United States are for the everyman? You've got wonderful cars, you've got inexpensive cars. Tell me about the background of Mecum and how that philosophy came about.
Well, that is a really good question, James, and it's a good point to make, because it is Dana Mecum, our company founder and visionary, still heavily involved with the company 30 years later after he founded it. Really had 2 goals. Number one was to provide a great auction experience for car collectors, buyers and sellers and spectators that were interested in cars of all spectrums. We'll have cars spanning 100 years of automotive history. We'll have cars at our Las Vegas debut, as an example, anywhere from $5,000 at the entry level all the way up to several $1 million cars, and lots of them six-figure cars as well. That's the first part of it. The second part of it is Dana wants to have auctions in every part of the United States to make it convenient and easy for anybody that wants to buy, sell, spectate at a Mecum auction to be able to do so. And we're very close now with 14 auctions, car auctions on our schedule. We're very close to meeting that. Needless to say, we're very proud to be going to Las Vegas. We're delighted we've got so many entries. The buzz is extreme, and we're looking forward to getting out there and getting it done.
Now, I know when I went to the Monterey auction, you had, I think it was a nice facility indoor, but you also had a lot of cars outdoors. So in Las Vegas, I believe, the occasion is indoors, and you've got this huge convention center space. Will the auction take place the same way, where you're constantly having a parade every 2 or 3 minutes of these cars, or do you have to make an adjustment if it's an indoor facility at all?
Well, the auction stage will be identical to what you saw in Monterey, and the pace of the cars will be identical. What will change is unlike Monterey, which is essentially everything outdoors,
yes,
on the golf fairways, with the exception of a gigantic tent where the auction arena is in,
yes,
completely completely different dynamic in Las Vegas, James, where everything will be indoors and secured, air-conditioned, comfort. It's going to be a really great venue. Everything will be easy to get to. We'll have the inventory, the actual inventory for all 3 days of the auction, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, November 16th through the 18th, will be parked on either side of the actual auction arena.
Yes.
So if somebody wants to go from their seats and they want to go look at cars and then come back, it's going to be a short, easy, convenient way to do that. The convention center is gigantic. I believe it's one of the largest convention spaces in the country, and very, very well suited for what we're doing.
Gotcha. Now, I notice on some of the lists of materials that went out that not only do you have cars that are attainable cars for the average person, but you have some really top-end cars. And I know that we've talked before about, like, for example, I know that there's going to be a 1958 Mercedes-Benz 300 SL Roadster that has quite a legacy to it, and then some others. So could you tell me about a few of the main attractions, if you will, of the Las Vegas show?
Well, you hit one of them. Anytime you have a 1950s, early 1960s Mercedes-Benz 300 SL, that's a top-shelf collector car and has always been a valuable car. But in the past 5 or 10 years, they've really exploded onto the market. And I mean, $1 million, is typically the beginning of where those cars are priced at. Another big hitter, one of our headline cars, we call them main attractions, is a 1965 Shelby 289 Cobra, not a replica, a real honest-to-goodness car, and right there in the shadow of Shelby American there in Las Vegas, still going strong today, by the way, not too far from the convention center, only about 3 or 4 miles away. Muscle car fans won't be disappointed. That 1968 Yanko Camaro, lots of other Shelbys, a ton of muscle cars. Corvettes always represent about 10% of Mecum inventory. Some late model and vintage exotic cars from the Italian exotic manufacturers. Porsche will be there in pretty good quantity as well. A real nice, interesting mix, about what you'd expect on sort of a eclectic region such as Las Vegas. Some really cool, neat stuff, and man, we're hoping that people come out and snap them up.
We've talked before about, I mean, you've been involved, I think now with Mecum, is it for 17 years now? Is that close?
Well, not quite, but I started in 2006.
Sorry.
Working consignments. In 2008, we won a television. We're now celebrating 10 years.
Yes.
On television. I'm the commentator analyst on the TV show now with NBCSN. Got a great show on that network now, and I wear both hats.
Yes.
I handle office duties, and then of course also go to the auctions. Also the kind of the spokesperson for Mecum Auctions. Do a lot of the interviews like with you and other events to represent Mecum. And I think it's a combination of obviously my knowledge of the collector car market and of Mecum, but just my enthusiasm for collector cars and collecting cars in general. It's my life's passion.
Yes, I can tell, John. You don't have much enthusiasm at all. You're fantastic. So I had my ears off a little bit, but what I was going to get to is we've talked once or twice before about how that there's trends in the auction industry, and when I first met you and we talked about the interest that's always there with muscle cars, but now I believe that you were telling me once before about a new interest in American pickup trucks. So if that's true, can you tell me about how the trends are in the auction industry and what you've experienced in your last decade or so in the industry?
Yeah, it's definitely been a big surprise. Of course, the whole collector car market is very aware. A lot having to do with watching our television shows on NBCSN to see just the influx of pickup trucks that have exploded as a part of the serious market and bringing big money. They've always been a part, but definitely a secondary, small part. Now they're right up there head and shoulders with cars, both in value, desirability, demand, all of that. One of the things, James, I think contributes to people say, well, why has this happened, is we really have to thank the aftermarket for coming on board to make a lot of reproduction parts to bring these old beat up pickup trucks back to life, and now they're being restored to the same standards as cars are. Literal, automotive jewelry. The same restoration standards apply to trucks, but we see them original. We see them very heavily modified. That's also a big trend, and we see them stock restored. And it's not just the older guys, the baby boomers buying these vintage trucks. It's a lot of the younger guys in their 30s and 40s. So we're seeing a nice generational transition in the market that all of us was hoping for, that's starting to unfold.
Yes, I think it triggers a thought about being in Monterey, seeing a lot of trucks down there on all the different kinds of shows, but in particular, my colleague and I saw a 1955 Ford F100 that was just pristine, and everybody was looking at it. So your points, I'm soaking it all in because it was just a prime example of what you're talking about, that there were very, very expensive cars, but everybody was looking at this wonderful pickup truck that we got a kick out of. So that brings me another question is, how does the auction process work? I know that you have collectors that and other people that you're probably are regulars that bring in their collections of cars, private collections and different things. But what about the average guy who has a car that he's finally ready to sell it, whatever it might be? It could be a Rambler American, it could be a Ferrari, whatever it might be. How do they approach you, and what's the process like if you're just an individual person who wants to sell their car?
James, the high-profile, high-dollar cars, and then the multiple collections, 6 collections we've got coming to Las Vegas, as an example, they seem to get a lot of the attention. But the reality is the bulk of what we do in the core of the collector car market are individuals buying and selling their cars at an auction, maybe only 1 or 2 cars at a time. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. So we have a procedure in place to make it easy for anybody who wants to sell a collector car at Mecum Auctions, regardless of value. We have a day and a time and a financial bracket that they can fit in. I'll give you some examples to enter a car to Mecum Auction, keeping in mind we're a reserve auction. That means a consignor has the option, and most do, of putting a reserve, or we also call a protected price, on their car. There's no obligation to sell it if it doesn't hit a number they're comfortable with. So they pay an entry fee to get it in the auction, and depending on the auction, the day and the time, and the value of the car, it'll range anywhere from $250 all the way on up for what we call main attraction catalog entry at our catalog auctions of $1,500.
Yes.
The commission of the sale price is 10%. Pretty easy to remember, pretty straightforward. We pay our sellers the hammer price minus that 10% commission of the hammer price, but that only applies if it sells. If it doesn't, they just take their vehicle home with them, just like they brought it to a car show. We sell about 70-75% of all the cars that cross the Mecum red carpet, and the rest of the sellers, they're not upset or they're not mad. They gave it a shot. We did our thing, and they just decided, I'm not getting quite enough money for it, and they take their vehicle home. They weren't forced to take, bottom line, they weren't forced to take less than what they wanted for the car. Some other auction companies don't operate that way.
Yeah, so one of the things that we noticed in Monterey, and I refer to Monterey because it's only my only experience with Mecum, and it was fascinating, is I think you call it a second chance, or you have a terminology for maybe a little bit of individual then negotiation between a seller and a prospective buyer that is also part of your business. And can you tell me about that?
Yeah, it's an important part of what we do, James. It's called the bid goes on. And what that means is if a car doesn't sell on the Mecum red carpet, we schedule about 35 cars an hour. So really, cars are spending less than 2 minutes up on the auction block. We have so many cars, and we want to make sure that we get everything in front of all the buyers. The cars will always go to the bid goes on under their control. 4 full-time guys are over there working cars that have not yet sold on the block. And roughly about 10% of all the cars that Mecum Auction sells are sold via the bid goes on process. So if you're watching television and you're seeing that it only looks like we're selling half the cars or 60% of the cars, you're not seeing and taking into account the fact that we're going to sell bid goes on cars over the next few days. If you wait until about midweek after the auction closes, go to Mecum.com and you can look at the results, and then you can see exactly the cars, including the bid goes on sales. All the current results will be posted, usually by the middle of the week after the close of the auction. It's pretty cool.
Yes, it is. Another thing that's cool about it is having not having any background in this. When we went to the auction in Monterey, the amount of people that are involved in your organization, I think in Monterey there must have been 300 people there in all different capacities, and I'm assuming that's going to be the same way in Las Vegas. And how is that coordination done? I mean, it's like watching a circus. It's just fantastic, and the moving parts are everywhere. And how is that all coordinated? And how many folks will there be in Las Vegas at the auction?
It is magic. It's really impressive just logistically how we pull it all together. 14 collector car auctions each year. Everybody is on the go nonstop. Everybody's excited, motivated. Yeah, you hit the number on the head. It takes about 300 of us total to run an auction like in Las Vegas, most of which are not full-time Mecum employees. These are people that say in the 30 years that we've been in business, we've just grown to have this reputation of being a great part-time or an occasional company to work for. Everybody gets treated well, and we stay in nice hotel rooms and get plenty of good food and rest. And the hours or the auction environment is very manic, but and the hours can be long. But everybody and I mean everybody, is just very excited and proud to be on board something that accomplishes so much in such a short time. Our typical Mecum auction, which is 3 days, we'll conduct more business in 3 days at one Mecum auction than the average small new car dealership will do an entire year. Think about that.
That's fantastic. And I think you referenced the word magical, and I wanted to ask you about something I was also unfamiliar with, which is the auction chant, if you will, and the buzz that surrounds that. When you get going and your colleagues get going, it's really like a study in linguistics or something, because it's fascinating to listen to the chant, if you will. And how did you develop that skill?
Well, fortunately, James, I never had to. Not a part of what I do.
Right.
The actual auctioneers, honestly, they are the rock stars.
They are the rock stars. Auctions. Thank you for correcting me.
They're the A-listers. They are the guys that have so much talent, responsibility. We'll do probably in Las Vegas. We'll conduct somewhere between $15 and $20 million worth of collector car sales over 3 days. That's a tremendous responsibility to keep everything straight and accurate, not miss any bids, call everything properly. They've got a good staff of ring people that help them, and they've also got everything's fairly automated and double checked with computers. If you look at the auction block, anytime you're there, either in person or you see it on television, you'll see a lot of people up there, up on the same stage, and those are support people that are making sure that everything is going smoothly and is getting entered into the system real time. We're so big and our auctions are so long that we really have to get everybody up to speed and wired for as much automation as possible, and we do.
Yeah, yes, you do. And so thank you I knew that you wore many hats, but I had that one incorrect, that you don't wear that hat, but you wear every other hat, so thanks for updating me on that. I do know also that you collect cars, and I wanted to ask you about, well, it's a two-part question. Number one, after seeing thousands and thousands of cars during these years, is there a particular car that still surprises you or has surprised you, that takes your breath away, that you've seen through the years, that just was, oh my gosh, I can't believe, and there's a good story behind it?
Well, once again, you kind of hit it on the head. A lot of times it's not necessarily just the car.
Yes.
A lot of times it might be the story or the condition of a car, and the actual significance of that car might be secondary. One owner or one family-owned car from the 1950s or 1960s, even if it's just an ordinary sort of typically wouldn't be a collector car, if it's been coveted and cared for and is in excellent original condition and there's a good story behind it, that always gets my attention. But if I have to think of something that's just really breathtaking, it combines all of that. We had a 1967 Corvette Coupe sell at our Indianapolis auction in May. Matt Latavsky was the son of the original owner of the car. He was a Vietnam vet. He had passed away actually some time ago. Matt had taken care of the car. His dad bought it new. Had 8,000 miles on it. It was 100% original. It brought an extraordinarily high amount of money. I think it was, I remember the hard number, $675,000, something like that. But it wasn't all about the money. It was just about the history of the car, the dynamic of the family, all of the emotion and the tears, and then, of course, the condition of the car was a literal time capsule.
Oh, what a great story.
That one I'm not going to forget.
No, I can imagine not. And I know that your family, your father was a Pontiac and Oldsmobile salesman in the 60s, and you started to identify cars when you were a very young guy. And I know that you're a car collector. So can you tell me about the cars that you have and how it came about that you got the cars that you have?
Well, it's kind of cool. My 1964 Pontiac GTO, which is the car that I grew up wanting, first muscle car and all that. In July of 1976, when I was 19 years old, I bought a 64 GTO, and I still own that exact car today. I've kept it all these years. And as a youngster, I identified that I wanted a GTO, a Mustang, a Corvette, and a Cadillac. Don't ask me why, but those were the four cars that I just identified with, and I'm just lucky enough to say that all these years later, I was able to obtain at least one of those examples, 2 Corvettes, a Mustang, a Cadillac, and of course my GTO. So a 6-car garage, it's completely full, and I'm tempted, as a lot of people are, to see really cool cars hit the auction block at Mecum Auctions, but I'd have to sell something to make space for a new one, and not in the mood to sell right now.
No, and you have 2 daily drivers, I think, that we've talked about once before as well. Your wife and yourself have daily drivers.
Yeah, we have, you need a car to drive in the wintertime.
Sure.
Living here in the Midwest, we live right on the Illinois-Wisconsin border. My wife's got a 2015 Ford Fusion. She loves it. I drive a 2015 Cadillac SRX. But when it's nice outside, like today, I drove my Mustang GT, a 6-speed, 420-horse, 5-liter Coyote. That's a driver when the weather is nice. Alternate that between that and my LS3 2010 Corvette on the nice days. And hopefully we've got another month or so of good weather before the snow hits.
You guys, that's living large for anybody who's a car enthusiast. So I just wanted to go over one other thing. Yes, I'm a car enthusiast, but I'm fairly new to the game. Let's just say that there's somebody in Las Vegas. They're walking down the street. They're visiting Las Vegas, and they see the sign for Mecum, and they're going to go check it out, but they're not really in the car world that much. What would you suggest that somebody who's going to one of your auctions for the first time, how do they take it in? What would you suggest that they do?
Well, a lot of people, James, I don't think a lot of people understand that we welcome spectators just as much as we do consigners and bidders. Very important part of what we do. It's a $30 ticket. Anybody can walk up, spend $30, and come in and have complete access to a Mecum auction. You get right up next to the cars. There's seating areas for the spectators as well. It's an incredible car show, the best car show people tell us that they've ever attended. If you go to Mecum.com, you can buy tickets in advance for only $20.
That's great.
So that's even a better deal. But I tell people a couple of keys: get there early. Gates open at 8 o'clock. On Thursday, cars will start at 1 o'clock. On Friday and Saturday, they'll start at 10 a.m. But get there before the cars start, before all the auction mayhem starts to occur, when things are a bit calmer and you can have kind of a clearer mind, particularly if you're thinking about maybe looking to see if there might be a car that might pique your interest. If you do want to transition that ticket into a bidder registration, of course, the bidder registration folks are right on site as well. And that's an easy transition. A lot of people do that. They buy a ticket, come in with their buddy, look around, and they see the car of their dreams, and they go up to the bidder registration folks and get squared away. It takes about 5 minutes. That's also very easy to do. But wear good walking shoes, because you're going to be doing a lot of walking. The convention center is huge. To house 1,000 cars takes up a lot of space. And you're going to be doing a lot of walking, especially if you want to get a good look at all the cars. But, this spectator thing, it adds so much to the energy and the excitement of a Mecum auction. If somebody doesn't want to be a bidder, it's no problem. We really encourage anybody that wants to come out. And by the way, kids 12 and under, all free.
That's great. Well, that's a perfect way to wrap it up. Thank you so much for your expertise. You're making me energized. I want to come down now. I want to come to Las Vegas as well. So thank you for our guest today. We really appreciate it. Thank you for listening to the Weekly Driver Podcast. My name is James Raia. Please check out my website, www.theweeklydriver.com, and make sure to check out Mecum.com for the latest and all their different auctions around the country. It's a fantastic way to be a newcomer or an expert in the automotive auction world. It's a great thing to take in, and I can't wait to my next one. So thank you again for being our guest, John. We appreciate it very much. The Weekly Driver Podcast gets support from ExtremeTerrain.com, your Jeep Wrangler authority for all things YJ, TJ, JK, and JL related. Extreme Terrain is dedicated to providing accurate information and top-notch customer service for the hottest Jeep parts around. Visit ExtremeTerrain.com today and enter weekly for your chance to win 2 2018 JL Wranglers from now through November 15th, 2017.